So I'd like to move on to Mr. Triantafylopoulos. The goals that the European Union has set with the European Hydrogen Bank mentioned by Mrs. Spyraki earlier, and just generally the kind of broader geopolitics in relation to the US and the Middle East has made certain announcements and is already implementing certain plans for hydrogen production. Are we going to have the right economies of scale in order to have the right kind of development of hydrogen in our country, and especially when it comes to biomethane? In the case of green hydrogen, we're talking about renewables. So how do you see that being developed? First of all, allow me to say that since we are in a forum where the main focus seems to be renewable energy sources, that the electrolysis units offer a very good alternative, for further development of renewables, and especially in our country. I've said it before, and I'm going to repeat it. There is a delegated act that consists of two things that relate to the renewables. One of them is the temporal correlation, which means that from 2030 onwards, any electrolyzer operating in Europe must prove that by the hour that it uses green energy, and the other one is the anti-sonality, which basically what it says is that one electrolyzer starts producing after the 1st of January 2028, which is also a time frame, if you like, that we kind of expect to see for the production of hydrolyzers. It needs to be supported by new renewables. And what we mean by new, we're talking about assets that have not been set in operation more than 3 years after the 1st of January 2028, which means that they're from the 1st of January 2025. So when an electrolyzer has a PPA, requires 3 times so for 100 megawatts, it needs 300 megawatts of renewable energy when it's operating through a PPA process and not through a direct line. So you must understand that the kind of alternative that gives to developers this new market. We also talked in detail in the last couple of days about the curtailments. An electrolyzer can operate to a certain extent, because beyond that it becomes not very good price competitive, but to a very large extent it can be used almost as a battery for storing the surplus energy. These are important things. These are things which we haven't yet integrated, obviously, in a legislative framework, but we also haven't integrated them in the way we think when it comes to renewables development. Yes, this is a very important point, and it really does offer an alternative for renewables, especially for new renewables, for those that are already connected and they have received connection terms. They're not going to fall into that category, and therefore we will need to find alternatives for the remaining projects. One more question to Mrs. Spyraki. Should the European Union policy be such that it promotes hydrogen in comparison to other energy sources? And a further question, should they be supported, the production of green hydrogen, so that it becomes a model of reusing of the old pipelines, of the existing pipelines for natural gas, and whether there has been any kind of discussion on a European level for the fast track processes of certain areas, just like we've seen in the case of offshore wind, for accelerating the installation of renewables that can be linked to the production of hydrogen, so that there isn't that asynchronicity, if you like, that we've seen in other implementations in the energy sector in general. It is important to take into account here what was mentioned earlier, that the Delegated Act is part of RED 3, and both the Delegated Act and as well as the amended directive on renewable energy sources, they give a great boost to renewables by offering two tools. One of them is the definition of green hydrogen by the Delegated Act, and very correctly you reminded us of the requirement of new. Again, we're having technical difficulties with the speaker, and the interpreters are not able to translate.
Με πολύ γρήγορους ρυθμούς, εξαιρώντας τις περιοχές ναυτιλιακές και στην κατεύθυνση της fast track αδειοδότησης το συντομότερο δυνατό. Αυτή η νομοθεσία, παρά το γεγονός ότι η νομοθεσία στην Ελλάδα επικαιροποιείται, δεν έχει ακόμη ενσωματωθεί στο εθνικό δίκαιο. Άρα έχουμε ένα κενό στο οποίο πρέπει να προχωρήσουμε, ειδικά το κομμάτι της ΡΕΔ, που πρέπει να επιτευχθεί. Και δεύτερο, με ρωτήσατε, εκεί τα δίκτυα είναι προφανές ότι θα πρέπει να επικαιροποιηθούν. Και επ' αυτό επιτρέψτε να πω ότι είναι απαραίτητο επίσης και όσα είναι υποκατασκευή να γίνονται hydrogen ready. Δεν μπορεί δηλαδή σήμερα να κάνουμε οποιαδήποτε υποδομή χωρίς να έχουμε στο μυαλό μας ότι στην επόμενη φάση θα φιλοξενούμε στις υποδομές υδρογόνου. Έχει ανοίξει μια μεγάλη συζήτηση για το αν θα πρέπει να κάνουμε το περίφημο hydrogen. Δεν είμαστε ακόμα. Δηλαδή η μεταφορά του υδρογόνου ακόμα και από τις χώρες εισαγωγής μπορεί να γίνει αντίρρηβατη.
Ναι. Ωραία. Δεν σε ακούμε πάρα πολύ καλά, είναι λίγο...
We can't hear you very well because there's a connection problem, says the speaker. I'd just like to compliment what Ms. Spiraki said. It'd be nice to see you in person, Ms. Spiraki, because I believe that you've made a great contribution, and it's true that the European Parliament, we have plenty of regulatory things that have come from Europe, and then Europe has decided that both gases are the two gases, both biomethane and hydrogen are the two that are going to be used for the decarbonization. And hydrogen is carbon negative and not just carbon neutral. And if we have because if we can capture the CO2 with hydrogen, and this can be used by also substituting natural gas for the industry. Therefore, there's a great synergy, and very correctly, Europe has opened the agenda. Because what's going to happen to the grid in the end, whether the hydrogen is going to be biomethane or this has now changed. The role of biomethane is seen as a lot greater, and we believe that both gases are important. The idea that in the future there's not going to be any hydrogen and biomethane, I think it's something that it's a very old-fashioned view. Because we thought that biomethane could never be negative, and if hydrogen can have zero carbon, then that might be 100% in 20 or 30 years. This is something that's changed completely, and I believe that should be central to any policy, that both gases must be pushed as much as possible, and essentially in the next few years we're going to see the applications of both gases. the European Union needs to see what's going on. The hydrogen is going to be important. Let's not forget that. The hydrogen is not going to be ours. Biomethane is going to, some of it is going to be ours. It's 10 plus 10. Allow me to leave because I need to go to another. I need to go to a meeting. Just one final comment by Ms. Bayrami. I would just like to add to what Mr. Ifadi said, that biomethane is going to be made in Greece. This is very important. It's important that we're going to have a production of our own fuel from renewables. However, it remains to be seen what the challenge is going to be, the challenge of the transition to biomethane. We need to look at this macroscopically. Not all plants are sustainable. The sustainable ones are only the ones that are more than 1 gigawatt. I would like to thank everyone for this very interesting discussion, and thank you very much.